What's up, everybody? How are we doing? Could you hear the music? I didn't even check and see if the music was on. What's going on? Good morning. How we doing today? Mic check. What's happening, everybody? Nope, the music wasn't even on, but that's all right. Oops, that's okay. Good morning, chat. How we doing, everybody? Give some people a couple minutes to get up in here. Share this. If you're free, Eddie, man, share this, man. Copy, paste it, share it. I'll give you a minute. Definitely share this.
News. A 15-year-old boy they could easily use. They threw his clean clothes in a bloodstained car and locked up a peacemaker behind iron bars. They call him a predator to hide their own lies, but we see the truth when we look in his eyes. A loyal young soul, so gentle and polite. We're standing together to finish this fight. Unchain the gentle giant, let a good soul breathe. Free Eddie the Teddy, it's time he's released. Break down the courtroom walls, let the truth ring clear. Bring our selfless boy home in the 30-year tear. They hid all the palm prints, the DNA strands, put a lifetime of blame on a child's scarred hands. But the science is speaking, the silence is broke. We're tearing the fabric of the web that they spoke. He's grateful and compassionate, steady and true. An innocent man wearing prison cell blue. The system can bend, but it's breaking today. We won't stop shouting till he walks away. Unchain the gentle giant, let a good soul breathe. Free Eddie the Teddy, it's time he's released. Break down the courtroom walls, let the truth ring clear. Bring our selfless boy home in the 30-year tear.
Tired of their stories, tired of the pain. We rise up together, we'll dance in the rain. He's our gentle giant, our shining star. We'll fight till the end. We'll carry him
Unchain the gentle giant, let a good soul breathe. Free
How about that? We'll find a way, man. Eddie the Teddy. Wow. But I gotta say, if anyone goes into jail, I wouldn't say it, in there, Eddie the Teddy. I wouldn't say it in there. Just like no one should be calling Diddy Love, Call me Love. I just seen that Diddy there's a freak off party. I just seen on YouTube an animated series freak off party. I seen it. Oh, I was like, yo, they got a Diddy freak off party animated series. Wow. What else can you say? What else can you say about that? Maybe a little explosion or something. What's going on, everybody? How are we doing today? Glad y'all are in here. I was going through a few things yesterday, always looking up some research, and I came across some interesting things that we're going to get into today, but right now we're in 2026. Who would have known, right? And I'm done talking about, I think, what they should have done back then, what they should have done back in 1995, 96. But I know how the system was back then. They wasn't trying to do anything for anybody but lock your ass up. That's all they were trying to do back then, is lock your ass up. How's everybody doing? Because the truth is, they didn't want the truth. They didn't even protect Eddie. They couldn't protect the child. They didn't follow the evidence. They didn't even honor the law. They couldn't even get that right. They didn't give Eddie O'Brien the defense he deserved. Absolutely not. Boy George, we're calling Boy George. Bobby George, Boy George. They didn't give Eddie O'Brien, no experts. He went through all that money, and here we are, decades later, 30 years later. Imagine that, 30 freaking years later, still picking up the pieces of a system that broke a family and walked away like nothing ever happened. I mean, that's just despicable. But today, man, today ain't about the past, man. Today's about right now. Today's about the future. Something always happening in these chats, man. These conversations, these breakdowns we've been doing. And I felt it, man. Y'all felt it. The O'Briens felt it. Regina felt it. We got to shift, a spark, a reason. A reason to turn that freaking camera back on. But once you start understanding the patterns, once you start seeing the patterns of the justice system and seeing, how they do things, how they rush hearings, the missing evidence, the ignored suspects, the contradictions. I mean, the lack of experts in this case. Once you see how a wrongful conviction is built brick by brick, you can't unsee it. And I think once you know the truth, you're responsible for what you do with the truth, and this is where we are now. This is where we are now. Some people told me they were upset because I don't talk about Turtle Boy anymore. But I don't care. Turtle Boy's like, I think, we'll have plenty to talk about him when we're going over his case about, why he's doing a bid and and we can go over his case and his appeal. That's when we'll talk about Turbo Boy. You know, and see what the system fails to do with Turbo Boy. But you know, with Turbo Boy, like, you're not gonna wave your Johnson in the face of the courts, right, and the justice system. You know, and I know a lot of people say, "Oh, he's doing it for Karen Reed. He was doing it for the First Amendment." But some of them things, you know, you just got to know when not to push the system. So I don't think the system's going to let you push them like that, and they're not going to swallow you. You know, the same way they swallowed Eddie O'Brien. You know, but today, man, community's waking up and saying, nah, not on our watch. But to the chat, man, thank you for showing up. Appreciate y'all. To the O'Briens, thank you for trusting us with your truth. You know, shout out to you guys. Shout out to Big Ed, man. You know, get well. You know, I hope you feel better soon. To everybody listening, you know, buckle up. We're not just, you know, talking tonight. There's a few things we're gonna talk about. I was reading some of the SJC cases of recently of 2026, and I seen a couple that, you know, basically was about the O'Brien case, you know, well, connected to the Eddie O'Brien case. One actually in the description, you mentioned Eddie O'Brien. You know, I think I put the screenshot up somewhere, you know, but we were looking at the Mass Supreme Court, you know, some of the cases, and there was a few cases in there, and they talk about the Rule 30. They talk about the Rule 30. One of them was Commonwealth versus Fujita, Fujita. It's a FJC. They affirmed Nathaniel Fajita's first degree conviction and denial of his Rule 30 motion, and rejecting him claims of newly discovered evidence and improper suppression ruling. Now, in this guy's case, I guess this guy killed his ex-girl in 2011 by strangling her and cutting her throat. But he argued lack of responsibility due to mental illness and major depression, which a lot of this case, I'll tell you when it has to do with Eddie's case, but I just want to give you the foundation. You know, we're going to go over 3 cases today. You know, I just want to give you the foundation a little bit. But a jury convicted him of deliberate and premeditation in extreme cruelty. That's basically what Eddie had. You know, his Rule 30 motion claimed newly discovered schizophrenia years after the crime, right? But the SJC held that finding out now that he has schizophrenia did not cast any real doubt on the justice of his conviction, right? The suppression ruling were proper, right? And the conviction stands, right? So what does that got to do with Eddie O'Brien? The SJC modified one thing, right? They said that he was under 21, right? And we know in Massachusetts, I know Rhode Island's trying to get it done, but the SJC ruled that life without parole is unconstitutional for offenders under 21 and ordered resentencing to life with parole eligibility after 15 years. Now, right? We already know that, you know, because that's what Eddie has. He's doing 15 to life, right? This is the part of emerging youthful offenders, though, the constitutional doctrine in Massachusetts, that I think they start to get into this. But why I think what is it, Fujita, Fujita, I can't even pronounce it, but they talked about the atrocity or cruelty. They reaffirmed that the atrocity or cruelty remains a valid theory of first degree, and mental illness does not negate criminal responsibility, right? And I know you want to get to the Eddie O'Brien stuff, right? Okay. What does this mean for Eddie, right? All right. I know. You're like, I don't care about all that other shit. What does it mean for Eddie O'Brien, right? Well, it strengthens the argument, his case, right, that life without parole for youths is unconstitutional. We know that, and other states are trying to get that passed as well. But the SJC, they held that life without parole is unconstitutional for defendants under 21. Now, Eddie was 17 at the time that he went to court, right? He was 15 at the time of the offense, well under the threshold. So this supports resentencing, parole eligibility. Cool. We already know that, claims under Article 26. The fajita does not weaken the attack on the old extreme atrocity and cruelty instructions, but Eddie O'Brien 95 to 97 jury instructions use pre-Castillo, pre-Brown, and pre-Gonzalez language that the SJC has since declared unconstitutional. Right? So in Fajita's case, they used modern, constitutionally compliant instructions. Stay with me. You know what I mean? I know this is tough for a lot of you. They did not involve the outdated, right? They didn't involve the stuff that sentenced Eddie, right? They don't even look at that shit anymore. Therefore, Fajita does not block a Rule 30 challenge to the O'Brien's instructions, right? They don't block it. But does the new evidence cast real doubt on the justice in the conviction, right? In the Fajita case, the SJC says no, because a schizophrenia diagnosis didn't undermine the trial evidence, right? So now we get to O'Brien. Are you all caught up? You don't understand, huh? All right, for O'Brien, the challenge is not about a new, that he's crazy or new psychiatric evidence, right? It's about a constitutional error in jury instructions, a much stronger ground. And as we get into the next case, because I'm going to talk about 3 cases that the SGC ruled on these last couple of months, 2020, 26. Shout out to 2 Cents Worth. What's going on? Shout out to Law Talkers, everybody in the chat. Let me put this up on the stage. Shout out to Denise Noel. Shout out to Robert. How you doing? It's about constitutional error in jury instructions. It's much stronger ground. The Fajita case shows that the FJC is willing to revisit sentences for youths, which is great, even in brutal murder cases, because this was a brutal case as well, right? And that's what people say, oh, will they see Eddie's case because how brutal it is? Well, I mean, yes, even in brutal cases, right? So that's good. The SJC upheld Fajita's conviction, but still granted him parole eligibility because of his age, right? This aligns with Dictenko 1 and 2, Okoro, Mattis, Garcia, Lopes, the Castillo law back in 2020. This trend helps O'Brien. It doesn't hurt him, right? So the Fajita 2026 does not harm Eddie O'Brien's Rule 30 prospects. If anything, it makes it even stronger for 2 major arguments. Now, in the next case, the court is actually getting a lot stricter on Rule 30. there's a lot of stuff that they're no longer allowing, people to try to overturn their convictions with, which is kind of crazy because if something's not right, it's not right, whether it's a small technicality or a big technicality. How can you tell me, if something's a technicality, you don't read me my rights, they may look at it as a small technicality and saying, we're not going to hear that. But life without parole for youth is unconstitutional in Massachusetts, right? So Fajita confirms the SJC's, right, that under 21 offenders cannot constitutionally receive life without parole. So the old extreme atrocity or cruelty instructions are invalid, like Eddie's instructions, right, which he flipped his. Fajita used modern instructions, and the O'Brien jury received now unconstitutional instructions, right? That is a structural error that goes directly to the integrity of that verdict, right? So now, a Rule 30, that is the correct way to go. Fajita reaffirms the Rule 30 standard, but does not restrict its use for constitutional instructional error, which is stronger than his psychiatric claim. Now, if you break down the prejudice that they pretended not to see in Eddie O'Brien's case, and that's why the SJC modern ruling, including Fajita's, makes the Commonwealth look like they're still running Windows 95 or some shit. The investigation, right? The way the Commonwealth handled Eddie's investigation, like they were following directions from a damn fortune cookie factory. Everybody in and out of the crime scene, alternative suspects, where are they? No real forensic roadmaps. I mean, tunnel vision so tight, it could have been a straw. They treated the Eddie O'Brien case like a drive-through order. A 1-minute conviction, hold the facts. But now you got decades later, 30 years later, and the Rule 30 asks the only questions that matter. Did this sloppy, biased investigation change the outcome of the verdict? When you start with this conclusion, the investigation becomes a scavenger hunt for confirmation, right? Then you look at the evidence, right? Let's talk about the forensic evidence in this case, right? Because the Commonwealth, they handled the evidence like it was a freaking Capri Sun, squeezing it, spilling it, losing half of it, and then blaming everyone else. You had contaminated items, chain of custody issues. Planting evidence. And then they have the nerve to say, oh, it was a harmless error. It was a harmless error finding a knife in Eddie's bedroom, taking it outside, wrapping it up in paper towel, and putting it in the garbage barrel and asking the other detective to look in the garbage barrel. That was a harmless error. Wow. That's crooked. Because if the evidence was any more mishandled, shit, it would need a DCF caseworker. This is prejudice baked into the process. That ain't by accident. Now let's look at the youth factor. Science. Never heard of it, right? Of course not. Eddie was only 15. But the Commonwealth treated Eddie O'Brien like he was a 45-year-old mob captain. They ignored the adolescent brain science, right? They ignored his psychological development. They ignored everything, But the modern SJC, in cases like Fajita, is basically quoting neuroscience like it's scripture. Age matters, development matters, right? Sentencing has to reflect that, right? In the Commonwealth stance, in Eddie's case, it looks prehistoric, right? Like they still use dial-up internet. Well, we're all running on 4K. And then the prosecutor's story was so flimsy, it should have came with a warning label. They built the narrative on fear. They built it on politics. You can't forget the politics in this, the pressure, the Riley Bud connection, the Deval Patrick connection. That is big. That is a big key in here. Another very important witness, Regina Mahoney. Very important witness. They didn't give the jury the truth. And that's going to come up when I talk about the second case, right? They gave them a magic show, and a Rule 30 is going to ask, would the jury have decided differently if they weren't hypnotized by the Commonwealth smoke and mirrors routine? Would the jury decided differently if they would have heard from Gina? Would the jury have decided differently if they would have knew about the Amatol test? You ordered the test. The jury should know about that. Now, my fifth point, right? Jury instructions. They were outdated. They're unconstitutional, right? And still pretending they're valid, right? This is where the Commonwealth really embarrasses itself. You know, Eddie's jury got the old, now unconstitutional, extreme atrocity or cruelty instructions. They don't even have them anymore. They're not even allowed to use them anymore. That's the instructions the jury got. The ones the SJC has sons gutted, buried, burnt, made sure they were never to be seen again. They were so horrible, rewritten and modernized, and that's what they use today. But in the Fajita case, the SJC used the modern stuff. The Commonwealth's out here trying to defend a conviction, right? Built on instructions the SJC itself no longer trusts. And this is what Eddie was convicted on. Instructions that the SJC no longer even trusts. I don't know if that's harmless error. I mean, that's a structural collapse. That's why, this Rule 30 should be heard. The Commonwealth wants to act like prejudice is a rare Pokemon card. You know what I mean? But we didn't see any of that, right? But in Eddie O'Brien's case, it's everywhere. It's in the investigation. It's in the evidence. What about him being so young? The age science or the youth science. It's in the story. The jury instructions, the sentencing, the constitutional violations. I mean, this isn't a crack in the foundation in the Eddie O'Brien case, right? It's the whole building leaning like the Tower of Pisa. Like, this ain't just, people are looking at this and, when people tell me, oh, he's guilty, and tell me why. Why you say that? Well, a jury convicted him. All right. Like, jury would convict anything. You know what I mean? Like, that ain't putting a lot of faith in. Like, why is he guilty? Tell me why. And they'll say something that's not even true. That's part of the trial. And the Rule 30, this was built for exactly this kind of injustice. But in the fajita case, it got the benefit of modern law, of modern constitutional protection. But Eddie O'Brien got the benefit of nothing at all. The fajita case shows the SJC understands being young matters, brain development matters. Life without parole, under 21 is unconstitutional. We know that, right? Jury instructions must be precise and they must be modernized, right? Forensic must be reliable. Eddie O'Brien's case shows that the Commonwealth in the 1990s ignored his age, right? Ignored the science. They used illegal jury instructions that are now unconstitutional. They botched evidence. They screwed up evidence. They followed political pressure instead of facts. This shit is so loud, it's disrespectful. Oh, don't worry. We got more. Give me a minute. I'll be right back. We got more. I got to get to the next case. I'm going to tie it all in.
sealed up the gate. Every story is a lesson, not just for today. A reminder to listen, to show a better way. When the voices of the many are ignored with disdain, we've lost the battle and it's all in vain. Let the echoes of the experts ring loud and clear. For every Eddie standing there, we cannot disappear.
We back. I'm back. You back. We back. Yeah, what's going on, man? How we doing? I'm glad you're all back. I noticed everyone busy arguing on social media. I was taking a look at the mass appeal courts and the new FJC, and I noticed something that was going on. I said, these mofos are rearranging the furniture in homicide law. You start reading, it's like not loud, not flashy, being quiet though, subtle. enough that only the people paying attention could catch it. And last night, it flashes across my screen, right? But guess who was paying attention at the time? I was, when I start reading it and I see Eddie O'Brien's name at the top of the header. And I was like, interesting, So I start reading these different cases, you know. But yeah, we were paying attention. I was, you know. But these new rulings, they're not random, I don't think. They're not isolated. They're not, oh, that's interesting moments. I mean, this is the court sending message in some type of code, and they're basically saying we're not overturning convictions because something looks messy, but we are rethinking what justice looks like for young defendants. In Commonwealth versus Fajita, we went over that. They basically said life without parole to anyone under 21. That's unconstitutional. They go over to 15. Then parole eligibility. They talk about the developmental science stepping into the courtroom. The brain ain't done cooking yet argument comes in. And then you look at Commonwealth versus Batman. And this was the other one I was saying. So now the SJC in Bateman, Commonwealth versus Bateman, they're saying don't come in here talking about procedures. You know what I mean? Unless you can prove it changed your whole outcome. And basically, if it didn't break the case, it's not breaking the conviction. They're getting kind of a little stringent on what they're going to, overturn convictions on. But Eddie's case, right? What does this mean for Eddie O'Brien? Right? Eddie's case, I think, sits right at the crossroads of all these shifts that are going on right now at the SJC. The sentencing fairness that they're going over, evidence integrity. They're doing a lot of that. And Eddie has a lot of evidentiary integrity problems in his case. And the question that's been haunting Massachusetts for decades, what happens when the system decides the narrative before it examines the evidence? And that's what happened. That's what happened in Eddie's case. Let's look at the narrative before the evidence. Oh, yeah, you knew right away. But I started digging into that, right? And connecting a few dots and hope that maybe they didn't line up. But they did line up. And the question the courts are tiptoeing around what I noticed. If the law is really, what do they call it, evolving, why is Eddie still sitting in a cell built on 1995 logic? Right? If you're saying, we're changing everything we did was so wrong, it was horrible. If it was so horrible, why you have Eddie and other people sitting in a cell based on logic? These three cases, right? Yeah, the Commonwealth versus Fajita, right? When the court admitted, the brain ain't done cooking, that you had time to grow. They didn't overturn his conviction. They didn't say he didn't do it, but what they did say, they had to take a stand about that's unconstitutional. And this was a 2026 ruling. Why? Because science, real science, says your brain is still under construction. Your impulse control is different. This is what I'm getting at. The judgment, the emotional regulations, right? All are still growing. So the court ruled you got to give these young kids a chance at parole after 15 years. And it should be like that in more states. But when they soften the sentencing rules, right, they tighten the evidence rules, is what's going on now, right? They upheld the search warrants. They allowed the psychological evidence. They basically said, we'll rethink punishment, but we're not going to loosen what gets admitted in court. And that's kind of scary. You know what I mean? What would you rather have? Would you rather have what gets loosened in court, or would you rather have, tighter punishment? I mean, that's the new energy in mass, it seems. Compassion in sentencing, steel in evidence. That's. But Commonwealth versus Bateman, the court then says, show me the harm, right? Show me what's so bad. This one is a whole lesson in how the appeal court works, right? You want to know how the appeal court works? Pay attention, because Bateman's team came in swinging, right? And this undisclosed audio they had, right? Weird gaps in police recordings, claims of ineffective assistance. Sounds messy, right? But you know what, the SJC? They looked at all that and said, all right, but did any of this actually change the outcome? Imagine undisclosed audio, weird gaps in police recordings, which means the cops edited shit out. Claims of ineffective assistance of counsel. So you would think that that's enough to overturn it, right? No. They want to know if any of that changed the outcome. Did any of that change the outcome? And when the answer was no, they affirmed the conviction. See, this case sets a huge precedent, right? Procedural mistakes look like they don't matter unless they cause real measurable harm. Not it looks bad, not it could have mattered, the vibes were off. No, they want proof that the mistake changed the verdict. This is the court, I think, drawing a line in the sand. Don't you bring us technicalities. Bring us injustice. Remember that. Don't bring us technicalities. Bring us injustice. Bob George wanted the money, didn't care about Eddie. Just wanted to be attorney general. Tom Riley just wanted to be attorney general at any cost, even put an innocent boy behind bars. Absolutely. Eddie is innocent. Someone else committed that crime. R.I.P. Janet. Yep. Justice for Eddie. Oh yeah, wait till Freeberg starts breaking all this down. Now the Eddie O'Brien lens, right? Now let's look at it through an Eddie O'Brien. I just had too many cups. Look at it through the lens of Eddie, right? What this case means for Eddie. Right, let's talk about why these rulings matter for Eddie O'Brien, right? Because the article straight up frames these cases as a comparable lens for his appeal, right? And here's what that means. Sentencing fairness is shifting, right? The Fajita case shows the court, right, is rethinking how young people are punished. Right? Eddie was 15. He was younger than all of them. That matters more today than it did in 1995. Right? Because evidence challenges must be airtight. So Bateman, if you look at Commonwealth versus Bateman, and that's an August 26th decision. Right? So, April 2026. the case of Bateman is if Eddie's team argues evidence was mishandled, suppressed, or flawed, they have to show actual prejudice, not just procedural sloppiness. They have to show, like, that there was prejudice in it, which I think they can do that. I mean, the courts want constitutional arguments, not chaos, right? If constitutional arguments, and I think that they could do that as well. But the article makes it clear, right? Future homicides appeals will hinge on substantive constitutional issues, not technical errors, one justice wrote. Imagine that. Will hinge on substantive constitutional issues, not technical errors. So Eddie's path is narrow, but it's real. The courts are evolving, right? The law is evolving. And Eddie's case, sits right in the middle of that evolution. See, if you put all these cases together, you see the pattern. Sentencing is becoming more humane, but evidence standards are staying strict. And if there's a procedural, violation, you have to show that it caused you real harm. And being young matters. The younger you are when you committed the crime, I think that carries a lot of weight. This is the court basically recalibrating, slowly, quietly, without anybody realizing it. And if the system is changing, then the question becomes, right? Why are we still treating Eddie O'Brien like the law froze back in 1995? I mean, the shift they hoped, you wouldn't even notice. I mean, the courts are definitely evolving. But the science in all this. And then there was another case. I think that it was Commonwealth versus Sonny Yes. What the case actually is, it was actually decided April 7, 2026. Sonny was 16 years old during a 2019 incident that led to charges of involuntary manslaughter, right? Motor vehicle homicide by reckless op. In 2021, he pleaded guilty as a youthful offender and received a combination sentence. Commitment to DYS until the age of 21, followed by a 5 to 7 year state prison sentence, suspended for 5 years pending probation. Imagine that. Wow. So go to your 21, then you got 5 to 7 years probation. He served 18 months in a secure DYS facility, was released on conditional liberty, then violated probation in 2024, triggering the suspended adult sentence. He asked the court to give him jail credit, time served, therefore it cannot be credited. All right, jail credits. Where's this connect? Oh, and how this actually connects to Eddie, like the original crime, except he was young as well. But I can't believe he only got till he's 21. See, before Eddie, that's what the sentence was. And then they just changed the law when Eddie comes around, and then they switched it back. Then they said, oh, it's unconstitutional. You can't do this. That's wrong. So even though Sonny lost, the FJC confirmed, now this was just in April of 2026, right, that children should be treated not as criminals, but as children in need of aid, encouragement, and guidance. This is the exact language the courts quoted in the decision. The court also acknowledged that youthful offender systems is harsher, is much tougher than juvenile court. Juvenile sentences is inconsistent, and there is tension between rehabilitation and punishment. Why this case matters, right? Even though the ruling is narrow, right, about jail credit, and it really has nothing to do with Eddie's case, but re-explain the purpose of juvenile law. It retells you and reaffirms that the kids are constitutionally different than an adult. And it highlights these contradictions in these youthful offender systems. I mean, you got to recognize the system fails to protect these kids. And this is why I think that they are going to hear, they're going to hear what he has to say for that breakdown. But I'll be right back. I got to look for something.
In the courtroom lights, truth's gonna bend. Heffernan standing tall, trying to defend. Said it looked bad on paper, but it's all deeper. Politics lurking, call it a grim reaper. Eddie was just a kid, caught in the fray, but the power players had a game to play. From day one, they wanted him to fall. A kid in the spotlight, crushed by it all.
I knew I had it. It was in my other notebook. I wanted to tell you, like, why the Sonny case, I think, was so important for the Eddie O'Brien, for the Rule 30B motion. Even though Sonny is not a Rule 30 case at all, it shows that the SJC, right, what they're currently thinking, right, that juvenile brain science, kids' brain science, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, kids' brains, and constitutional framing, like the SJC continues to treat kids' status as meaningful now. It's a little bit different than when Riley was around. Even when ruling against the juvenile on credit, the court, and this is all important, the court reaffirmed the distinct legal treatment of juveniles. They admitted these kids there has to be a distinct legal definition for the treatment of their age, right? They went over, they said it's so important that youth offenders statutory framework, right? They cited the Youthful Offender Act and its rehabilitative purpose. So this court, this body right here, the SJC, I mean, this supports Eddie's Rule 30 argument that modern youth science, which was not available or accepted back in 1995, and this ties into his juvenile transfer hearing, which is important for Eddie to flip. This is what Eddie has to flip, the transfer hearing, right? That has to be considered, right? So when evaluating prejudice, sentencing, and trial fairness, time out. Where is it? I didn't realize that was still up there. But when evaluating trial fairness, right? The SJC willingness to revisit the juvenile sentence issues, and the court took direct appellate review, saying that the juvenile sentencing issues remain a priority, right? And this right here strengthens Eddie's argument that his case deserves a modern constitutional scrutiny, especially since he was only 15 years old at the time of the offense. And the court, they kept hitting on procedural accuracy. You got to be right with the procedures. They had a strict reading of sentencing statutes in the Sonny S case, that the court is currently tightening procedural standards, but are still open to constitutional arguments if they're properly framed. And this really aligns with the trend that we've been putting together for Eddie O'Brien. The SJC is less forgiving of sloppy filings, but more receptive to substantive constitutional claims, especially involving kids. So if you could prove that there was a constitutional violation, especially the juveniles, the FJC has been feeling, on the side of the juveniles. The Sonny S case showed that the SJC was applying current science and modern legal framework to juvenile cases. And this also supports Eddie's claim that his trial, it was under outdated science. His sentencing ignored any type of understanding of, what's the word for a kid, adolescent development. It ignored all that, and his conviction should be reevaluated under today's standards. So all these cases strengthen Eddie O'Brien's Rule 30 motion. The newly discovered evidence argument, the modern neuroscience that's now accepted by the SJC, and it wasn't accepted back then. And it didn't even exist at Eddie's trial. So Sonny's case shows that the court is actively applying this science today. It supports. If the SJC is willing to revisit juvenile sentencing, right, in 2026, it just got to make the argument a lot stronger that Eddie's 1995 trial has to be examined on the modern standards. So the High Court engaged with these issues. I don't know. I just hope that come on, like, juveniles cannot be treated as adults. Eddie should have never been treated as an adult. And even though these juvenile cases lost on the credit issues, they wouldn't give him the credit. But I like how the court kept repeatedly acknowledging the constitutional statute of youths, and making it affirming it that it has to go under the current system. I mean, that is really that's very relevant to Eddie's claim that his trial treated him as an adult. His sentencing treated him as an adult. His rights were violated because the system ignored him being a kid. You know what I mean? So, like, for that alone, but the SJC, it's not granting relief to technicalities. That's crazy. They said it'll grant relief when the constitutional issues are strong. And it went into saying how juvenile arguments are receiving heightened attention, which is good. So that's why I thought maybe, we talk about this, even though it's confusing as all hell. But the court is saying that being young matters at every stage: sentencing, custody, probation, post conviction review. At every stage, the high court saying this shit matters. I mean, this stuff supports Eddie's Rule 30 motion, which is built on him being young, constitutional violations for being prejudiced, evidence that was suppressed. What else is in that motion? Oh, a third party culprit issue. And plus other stuff. I mean, it's crazy that how the Commonwealth versus Sonny in 2026 juvenile sentencing DYS credit. That's crazy. And Eddie ends up getting, life without parole originally. So hopefully that this all goes good for Eddie's Rule 30 motion. The injustice is the Commonwealth. What up, bro? The injustice is the Commonwealth. Right? Deplorable the way they treated Eddie. He should have been treated like a kid. And hopefully with these cases, these are all April 26 SJC decisions. So all of these should be I didn't even know that Venmo shit was up there. Let me get that down. And I also, let's see. We got to get into Margot's book too, finish them chapters. And Jerry, how we doing? How's everything, man? Hope all is well. I hope that breakdown wasn't too confusing, and I just had to like kind of break down the 3 cases and say how the case started. And but yeah, so this is what the SJC is thinking of, so at least they are thinking that it's all about the kids, right? Like when they were kids, we have to treat them as kids. But yo, don't go nowhere. We'll be right back.
Shadows dance in the neon glow. Tales of fear on the evening show. They needed a monster for the 5 o'clock news. A 15-year-old boy they could easily use. They threw his clean clothes in a bloodstained car and locked up a peacemaker behind iron bars. They call him a predator to hide their own lies, but we see the truth when we look in his eyes. A loyal young soul, so gentle and polite. We're standing together to finish this fight. Unchain the gentle giant, let a good soul breathe. Free Eddie the Teddy, it's time he's released. Break down the courtroom walls, let the truth ring clear. Bring our selfless boy home in the 30-year tear. They hid all the palm prints, the DNA strands, put a lifetime of blame on a child's scarred hands. But the science is speaking, the silence is broke. We're tearing the fabric of the web that they spoke. He's grateful and compassionate, steady and true. An innocent man wearing prison cell blue. The system can bend, but it's breaking today. We won't stop shouting till he walks away. Unchain the gentle giant, let it get soul breathe. Free Eddie the Teddy, it's time he's released. Break down the courtroom walls, let the truth ring clear. Bring our selfless boy home in the 30-year tear.
Tired of their stories, tired of the pain. We rise up together, we'll dance in the rain. He's our gentle giant, our shining star. We'll fight till the end, we'll carry him
Unchain the gentle giant, let a good soul breathe. Free Eddie the Teddy, it's time he's released. Break down the courtroom walls, let the truth ring clear. Bring our selfless boy home in the 30-year tear. As the lights dim, with a promise it'll stay. Our voices will rise, and we will find a way.
Yeah. In the shadows of a house where the whispers play,
door of the frame holds the secrets of the day. Locked on to Eddie, they whispered his name. Caught in a tempest, a life gone insane. Down in the dark, where the sailor path runs, a set of keys hit the dirt under disappearing suns. A house key, a car key, lost in the rush. But the state swept it up like a hand in the crush. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past, let Eddie rise high. Unseal the notes, expose all the blocks. Rayleigh trapped Eddie in a manufactured box. 30 years of hidden facts buried in the track. It is time to give Eddie O'Brien his freedom back. Unseal the box, break down the lock. Let the truth ring louder than the courthouse clock. 3 decades of silence, a cold prison shell. Refuse to lie, they cast a wicked spell. No remorse in their eyes, they judge from the booth. But Eddie stands tall, anchored in truth. Summer is opening, the science is real. The manufactured box begins to peel. Voices collide as hope takes its stand. With every heartbeat echoes a drowning band. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past, let Eddie rise high.
All right, damn song taking all my time. We back. Finish this off right. I wanted to go over this yesterday. Let me see. Yeah, I wanted to go over this yesterday. I'm gonna take this nice forensic evaluation into a clean, structured, where is it? We're gonna talk about. Let's see, how do I get it up on the screen? Hang on, I'm just looking for it. All right, here we go. Now, maybe I'll jump around a little bit, but we're going to talk about Eddie O'Brien's forensic evaluation from parole board. Hopefully I do this justice and break it down, but who Eddie was, who Eddie became. Oh, let me put it up on the screen. My bad, people. See, I'm glad I got this other screen that I could see. And your browser lost connection to the screen share. Okay, so I just got to do it again. That's all. Let me get that off there. There we go. So who is Eddie? Who he became? What the system can't ignore anymore? Because some people, I hear some people saying, "Oh, the guy is so He'll eat your intestines out if you turn away from him for too long. You know, he'll eat you and look at you. And I was like, what? Like, I don't know. Like, not the guy that I heard about. I mean, every stand-up guy that I heard from had nothing but great things to say about Eddie. So, you know, let's set the stage a little. We're breaking down right now a forensic evaluation, right? Submitted to the Mass Parole Board, you know, for Eddie back in June 2024. This document the board is going to lean on when they were making the determination whether Eddie was getting out after 30 years. I mean, the report is really not light reading, especially if you read it all. It's legal report. It's clinical. It's dense. Well, let's see if we can break it down like we're sitting at the kitchen table, right? Because this story inside the report is not just about Eddie. It's about what happens when a kid gets swallowed, right, by the system and grows up behind a wall, right? So, who was Eddie at 15 years old, right? Let's start with the basics, right? He was like, I mean, so whoever took this report, you know, he paints a picture of Eddie before the crime, right? And not the picture the media sold you in 1995 and all them stupid Boston Heralds and, you know, all them stupid friggin' newspapers, right? But according to the report, right, he had no trauma, no abuse, no juvenile record, right? No mental health issues, right? No substance abuse issues, right? No behavioral problems in school. I think mom said he might have came home late once or twice. Oh, and no, he did have an issue in school. I'm sorry. He forgot his tie. Yeah, his tie. He forgot his tie. So, yeah, he did have a behavioral problem. He had problems at school. He forgot his tie. He played sports, right? He worked, you know, like I said, altar boy. What else did he do? He helped his grandfather. They said he volunteered with the elderly. His family loved him. Good relationship with peers. When people talk to him now, they say, "Oh, he's such a sweet guy." You know, Jay Brill had nothing but great things to say about him when he went to see him. Unforgettable talks about when Unforgettable was going to visit Eddie. Denise talks highly about Eddie. You know, JoJo talks great things about Eddie. You know, so all these people have great things to say about Eddie. So this is not a kid that been spiraling. You know, it's not a kid on a criminal path. You know what I mean? He was a normal 15-year-old kid from a stable working class Irish family, right? So the writer of this, he says Eddie's development was very supportive. You know, this kid basically has no red flags. And you can go to the Truth About Eddie O'Brien and actually get this. It's actually up there now. The crime, the silence. Now, here's where it gets tricky, right? Eddie has always denied committing the murder, right? Always. And because he's still fighting for a new trial, his lawyers told him not to discuss his version of events in this evaluation. So the writer doesn't really dig into guilt or innocent. He sticks to what the parole board was going to use. The SJC's official version from 2000, and I think I have that also. But he does note something very important. Eddie admits he was in the house. He saw Janet Downing on the floor. He bent down to try to wake her up. Rolled her over. That's it. That's all he said. I mean, Eddie's 30 years inside. This is the part that shocked me, right? And I've been inside, and it's all documented. In 30 years of incarceration, Eddie has only had 7 7 tickets, 7 disciplinary reports, and none since 2013. Disciplinary summary. Mr. O'Brien has incurred 7 disciplinary reports since his DOC. Oh, let me check these comments here. Big shout out to Trisha OB. Hope everything's well. Yep, the real killer has been walking for 31 years. Big shout out to Mr. OB, feeling under the weather. Everybody wish him well. He said, I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you, Christina, the Mod Squad, and the wonderful people here that are really putting in the work. Shout out to Big Ed. You know, you got a seat at the dining room table. The damn tie. That's right. The damn tie. Good vibes. You could tell him we told the tie story, which his father told us that story the other day on his interview. You know, but in 30 years of incarceration, it's totally amazing that 7 disciplinary reports since his DOC incarceration back in 1997. Maybe that's a little better. Yep, full screen. There you go. Oh, that was okay. The other way. All right, but 7 reports. No gang involvement, right? No substance abuse, none of that. So where was I? 2 incidents in 2007 and 2010 involved physical altercations, and the others were largely for insolence or minor possession of contraband. He reports that he has a limited disciplinary history because he does not use alcohol or drugs. He stays away from gangs and gang-related activity and surrounds himself with like-minded people who are not about drama. Mr. O'Brien reports investing himself in his work, positive programming, and leisure activities, and helping out others, including his advocacy for expanded programming at NCCI Gardner. You know, he worked steady jobs in every building he was in, completed a bunch of programs, earned a paralegal certificate, earned college credits towards an associate degree. Yeah, I got my paralegal when I was incarcerated as well. Led restorative justice groups, helped rebuild a programming building at Gardner, advocated for more inmate programming, stayed connected to family and community. This evaluator calls his adjustment positive, stable, and pro-social. He literally says Eddie avoided the institutional behaviors that increase recidivism, which means, you know, coming back over and over. That's rare, that's powerful, and that's documented. That is impressive. Now let's talk about the clinical stuff a little bit. The evaluator says he ran multiple validated tools, and here's what they showed. Eddie has no mental illness at all, right? No depression, no psychosis, no personality disorders, nothing. He's not waiting till you turn around and going to do something crazy. He's not about the drama. No substance abuse issues in 31 years. Never had a substance abuse problem. before or during incarceration, right? No antisocial traits, right? He's not impulsive. He's not aggressive. He's the very least aggressive person in the joint. He's not manipulative. And they said he has a very low risk of reoffending. One test placed Eddie O'Brien in the lowest 2.3% of risk among incarcerated men. That's almost nothing. 2.3. Another placed him at the 43rd percentile, which is very, very low. His proactive factors, his family, education, work ethic are extremely high. The evaluator went on to say, this is not a man who poses a danger to society. So the big question, what if Eddie's innocent? Let me ask the chat. Actually, let me do something else. I believe you should see it in the chat. There should be a poll question. Is Eddie innocent? Yes, amazing, especially in a place like prison. You know, normally you become a product of your environment. And Eddie never changed, man. You know, people said, like, yo, this dude would wake up in the morning and be all smiles. And you all know I hate to even mention it, but gifted memberships, you know, grab yourself some gifted memberships. You two don't like that I don't mention it. I don't know how they even know this stuff. But yeah, I feel so funny even asking people like for gifted memberships. And I should be asking people to gift memberships, you know, and super chats and stuff. But I just feel funny doing it. But yeah, so you know, grab some gifted memberships. Really appreciate that. He's innocent. Absolutely, Trish. Me on your side. You know that. $100. I mean, so what if he's innocent? Right? Bottom line, Ed innocent. Absolutely. The evaluator does something very bold here. He says, if Eddie is telling the truth, if he didn't commit this murder, then his entire 30-year adjustment is exactly what you'd expect from somebody who was never a criminal to begin with. Ooh, that is tough. There you go. Read that one. If Eddie's telling the truth, if he didn't commit this murder, then his entire 30-year adjustment is exactly what you'd expect from somebody who was never a criminal to begin with. See that? Even the O'Briens raised a respectable convict. Shout out to them. You know what I mean? He went to the joint and he was a good, respectable kid. Imagine what he would have done on the street. You know, like that says a lot. That says a lot that, for one, the type of people what Big Ed and Trish was for 15 years, you know, raising Eddie, right? Up to 15, right? Because from 15 on, he goes on in a gladiator world in a high violent society, and he was a model prisoner. He was a, you would call it a productive member of, I don't know, I can't really say society, but a productive member of prison. You know, like, you know how rare that is? That is so rare, you know? And then he goes further. He says, even if Eddie did commit the crime, it fits the pattern of adolescent limited behavior, not lifelong criminality. Now, there's people that are a lot smarter than me and you and the other content creators, and they say, oh, if he killed, he's going to kill again. No, no. What does this say? If Eddie did commit the crime, it fits the pattern of adolescent limited behavior, not lifelong criminality. And that basically means a terrible act committed at 15 does not predict who he is at 44 years old. And the science backs that up. The evaluator cites Supreme Court cases like Miller versus Alabama, Roper versus Simmons, all saying the same thing, that kids change, that kids mature, that kids grow out of impulsive behaviors. And Eddie's life proves that. Eddie had a full reentry plan, right? He had housing at the Healy House in Boston. He had job opportunities. He had CDL training all set up. He had a vending collab entrepreneurship program, a supportive family. He had mentors in the community, mental health support. I mean, he had a great, great plan. And the evaluator says the plan was solid and meted every requirement for successful. Now, here's the part that the parole board couldn't ignore. The evaluator, a psychologist and attorney, concludes Eddie is not a danger to society. Eddie has rehabilitated. Eddie's risk of reoffending is extremely low. Eddie continued incarceration is not necessary for public safety. Eddie is strongly suitable for parole. He says Eddie's release would not be incompatible with the welfare of society. That's the legal standard. That's the bar. And Eddie meets it. And here's the guy that does this for a living. So when we talk about Eddie O'Brien, right, who are we talking about? We're not talking about a monster. You know, who are we talking about when we talk about Eddie O'Brien? a son, a brother, an uncle, a nephew, a friend. A cousin. He's many people. So the question now isn't whether Eddie is ready. The question is whether the system is ready to admit that a 15-year-old boy should not be defined forever by a moment. So when we talk about Eddie O'Brien, I mean, we're not talking about a monster. At least I'm not. We're not talking about a lost cause. So what are we talking about? The corruption's maddening, absolutely. This is a man who spent 30 years proving he deserved a second chance. But imagine that 30 years asking for a second chance. I mean, that is totally mind boggling. The question now isn't whether Eddie is ready. The question is the system ready to admit that they've been holding on to this kid for so long? He should not be forever defined by a moment. I mean, the science says he wasn't even developmentally equipped to even understand. And you still treated him like a grown man. The evaluation doesn't just tell Eddie's story. It tells the story of what rehabilitation actually looks like. You want to see rehabilitation through the lens. Like Eddie O'Brien is someone that the prison system rehabilitated, you could say. And the parole board, you've seen it. Considering they stole his first chance, that is the crime. And yes, Eddie was so young. Absolutely, he was. He was absolutely young. I hope the information today, I don't know, I hope it helped. Maybe, if we tell one person, we can convince one person that Eddie is innocent, and I hope maybe somebody will come over here and they'll be like, yo, I really believe Eddie's innocent. I thought he was guilty, but, now I believe. That'll make me feel like that's awesome, But this evaluation doesn't just tell Eddie's story. It tells a story of what he did while he was locked up in prison, all the classes he took, and the parole board sees it all. The parole board sees it all. So yeah, it's definitely free Eddie every day until it's backwards. For no way, we'll be back with some closing monologue, appreciate everybody, who sent a Venmo or a super chat or gifted membership. Really appreciate y'all. We'll be right back.
By it all, heaven and knew the truth. Yeah. Let me tell you about a kid, only 15 years. Eddie O'Brien, caught in the gears. Political pawns, they played their game. Power and money all in his name. But was tight with wealth, no simple fate. Climbed the ladder, sealed Eddie's state. Wayne Butter, prosecutor with a purpose. In the court of politics, none could touch us. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Riley and Bud, best friends since youth. Built a law firm, they spun the truth. When Riley took the case, he was never alone. Built on foundations, powerfully grown. With the Budwell network, they made a show. Charlie Baker in the mix, he's part of the flow. All linked together, climbing the heights. On Eddie's back, they rose to new sights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was a stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Kimberly Budd, her name now in lights. Chief Justice of the court in the highest of fights. Calls Riley godfather, mentor, uncle too. Let that sink in deep. Eddie's pain paved through. Judge Heffernan ruled fair, you played your part. But the pressure came down like a storm in the dark. It wasn't about truth, wasn't about rights. It was all about power and their political heights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Eddie got used by a system system so cruel. A pawn on the chessboard, they played him as a fool. So remember his name, let it echo, let it be. Free Eddie till it's backwards. Fight for the right, you see. Can we keep it real timeless? Let the truth ignite. We don't bend, we don't break. We will stand for the light.
Okay, there. So the system changed. Now it's up to time to change, right? So, before we wrap up today, we just walked through 3 major mass rulings, SJC court rulings that were April 26. They were decisions that quietly shifted the ground, right? Cases that prove the courts are evolving, that science is evolving, that standard for justice evolving, But Eddie O'Brien, he's still sitting in a cell built on 1995 logic. Let that make sense. And that's the problem. Because when you strip away the headlines, right, the fear, the politics, when you strip all that away, all the myths that they built around a 15-year-old Eddie O'Brien, you know what I mean? Oh boy, you're left with what? Truth the courts are finally starting to really acknowledge. Kids are different, right? Kids change, kids grow. The SJC said in the Fujita case, right? They said in Bateman, in the Sonny case, they said in every ruling that recognizes brain science, right? And the constitutional rights of young defendants. And I think that's the standard today, right? That's why isn't Eddie being measured by it? Why isn't it about guilt or innocence? That fight is still happening in the courts. I mean, this is about fairness, right? It's about consistency. It's about a system that can't evolve for everyone else and stay frozen for Eddie O'Brien. Eddie has spent nearly 30 years proving who he is, right? Not with words, not with just excuses, but with behaviors, but with discipline, with education, with services, with growth. And if the Commonwealth believes in rehabilitation, right? If the courts believe in science like they say they do, right? If the system believes in second chances like they promote they do, then Eddie O'Brien deserves to be seen through the same lens that they're using for everybody else. So I'll leave you with this, right? If justice is evolving, right, then justice must evolve for Eddie O'Brien too. Appreciate everybody. You know what I mean? We'll catch you on the next one. We out. Peace. Peace. We out. My house to your house. Say bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Eddie O'Brien, oh what a story to tell. 15 years young, caught in a prison cell. Trapped in the system, ain't that just a shame? For a crime he didn't do, they played him like a game. Pattern so clear, yet nobody sees. Intentional lies blowing in the breeze. Documented truths, but they're buried so deep. Poor kid lost his life while the system's asleep. Free Eddie, free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes. The man couldn't keep his own story straight. Taking the kid's future, ain't that real fate? Welcome back, chat got us talking hood-wise. Dark humor and metaphors disguised in the cries. Sir, hypothetically, in a murder case, ain't it funny how a fool runs this rat race? Growth don't happen in the middle of this mess. Step back, breathe, man, just let go of the stress. Free Eddie, free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes. See, you gotta let the clowns believe they succeeded. You didn't fold a break, you just got what you needed. Took it to the chin, not the heart, you see. Don't let the chaos take space in your melody. You're built different, like a lesson they missed. Teaching them boundaries, couldn't find them on a list. Drowning in a puddle, they dragged you below. But now you let them flounder, cause they reap what they sow. So here's to Eddie, justice long overdue. Fighting for the truth like we all have to do. Step back from the noise, watch him throw a fit. Free Eddie O'Brien, let's never forget this. Eddie O'Brien, oh what a story to tell. Fighting for his life in this unjust hell. Free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes.
The system didn't care about the pain or the rage. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. Wonder why the youth are lost in the haze. A puppet show of lives caught in a cruel maze. Stand-up dudes taking the order they kept. Left the neighborhood shattered, families wept. Addicts in the alleys, shadows of the past. We're stuck in the cycle, feeling outclassed. Why do the corners look like a zombie show? It's by design, we all know it, don't you know? It didn't happen by accident, it was all planned. deeper truth. A kid named Eddie O'Brien, lost in his youth. 15 years strong, thrown in a ruthless game. A machine built to crush, no mercy, just shame. Politics and fear, the media spins their lies. Eddie stood no chance, neath the soulless skies. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. Wonder why the youth are lost in the haze. A puppet show of lives caught in a cruel maze. But Eddie's not just a name in a fading light. He's a face of a struggle. He'll put up a fight. With the truth in his heart, he'll rise from the ground. Voices in the shadows, together we're found. So listen closely, this story ain't done. We're reclaiming our truth. We're taking back the sun. For every fallen brother, every shattered dream, we'll rise up together, united as a team. In a world of black and white, we lost the shade. Judgments made with no thought, no faith in what could be saved. Every expert that came said the same refrain. Eddie wasn't violent, he was fighting through the pain. Not a danger to the world, just a kid with a dream. They tout the wounds and scars like it's part of the theme, but they miss the truth behind the boy standing tall, caught in a system that refused to hear his call. Every single expert, they knew the facts. Non-violent heart, it's not an act. He was meant for healing, not this dark fate, but the court turned blind and sealed up the gate. With every test and interview, they painted his soul, but that didn't matter. They had lost control. They looked at a number, not the man within, ignoring all the voices that should have helped him win. The purpose of the hearing was to guide him through, yet they tossed the science like they never knew. Too dangerous to damage. Oh, that's not who he was, just a child in a system. Without a pause, every single expert, they knew the facts. Non-violent heart, it's not an act. He was meant for healing. Years old, life in a flash. Eddie O'Brien's dreams turned to ash. Caught in a storm of political lies. Justice was blind, just heard the cries. In 95, when the law turned cold, a tale of the super predator, truth untold. The DA's game, playing with fate, manipulated minds, sealing Eddie's slate. Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, voice is strong. It's time.
Just a boy from Somerville, dreams held so tight, caught in the crossfire, lost in the night. They saw his eyes, made him the face of the blame. In a game of politics, everything's just a name. When they opened the doors, fear ran through the halls, filling up those juvenile centers. Hearing justice's calls, but to make it look balanced, a price had to be paid. Eddie was sacrificed, and the cards were displayed. Oh, Eddie, just a boy caught in their game, with the pressure of a system. It's a crying shame. The weight of the world, it was heavy. Was wrong, just a boy from Somerville. He never stood strong. Barnum folded under pressure, playing to the crowd. The DA showboating, making justice loud. And when they moved the judge, who tried to see clear, all the truth turned to shadows, drowning in fear. The experts were silenced, their voices pulled low. Politics ran the case and they stole Eddie's hope. The system wanted a conviction, they didn't care how. In the court of opinions, no one knew him now. Just a boy caught in their game, with the pressure of a system. It's a crying shame. The weight of the world, it was heavy, it was wrong. Just a boy from Somerville. In the shadows of a house where the whispers play, the door of the frame holds the secrets of the day. Locked on to Eddie, they whispered his name. Caught in a tempest, a life gone insane. Down in the dark, where the cellar path runs, a set of keys hit the dirt under disappearing suns. A house key, a car key, lost in the rush, but the state swept it up like a hand in the crush. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past, let Eddie rise high. Unseal the notes, expose all the blocks. Rayleigh trapped Eddie in a manufactured box. 30 years of hidden facts, of silence, a cold prison shell. Refuse to lie. Now listen closely. I got a story to tell about a world that spun into a living hell. In the mid-90s, truth lost its place while the system turned its back on the human race. All they cared about was filling up the beds. Didn't matter who they grabbed, just fill up the spread. They took the innocent kids, tossed them aside. Evidence was trash, it was a twisted ride. Bodies in the system, just numbers on a page. The system didn't care about the pain or the rage. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. Wonder why the youth are lost in the